All right, battlers, welcome to the first ever Dojo Roundtable. I have two other Dojo members with me here. I have Church and Matt. The only member that we are missing is Linden Ryu, who couldn't be with us, but we're going to have a great discussion about the brand new Timeless Cup. We're going to talk briefly about the overall framing of the cup, what the restrictions mean for it, what Pokemon you are and are not going to see, how it is in some ways a freestyle meta with restrictions, and how that gives a fresh new life to this cup and keeps it more interesting than previous cups. Maybe even touch a little bit on how it's so similar to Rainbow. So if you had a great time during Rainbow, it was one of my favorite cups personally, you might enjoy Timeless as well. We're going to touch briefly on starters and the question of, should you build your team around a specific starter, or should you just build the best team and incorporate your starter however it is most useful? We're going to touch on a couple of different groups as well. Dragons, will they be a dominant force throughout the cup, or are they just an early fad? Fire and poison users, how they fit into the meta, as well as confusion users, ghosts, maybe a brief look at the top 25 pokes, and the razor leaf users as well. So to kick us off, I will start by asking an open-ended question. Just Church, Matt, whichever one of you guys want to pick this one up. The question is, with the overall framing of the cup, how do you feel about Timeless being its own cup, having its own identity, and how is Sylph keeping this cup fresh compared to cups we've seen in the past?
Probably the biggest thing is the three biggest things are the absence of flying, steel, and fairy. This opens up for in two ways for both grass and dragon to matter in a cup before, like matter for a cup in a way we haven't seen before. Yes, grass played an important supporting role in Rainbow, but with steel and especially the Nemesis flying gone, and with fire not looking early on to be that dominant of a typing in the meta, grass could be could see itself with one of the could see itself where it truly is the star of one of the cups, with only dragon eclipsing it.
Church, what are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, it's more just kind of about getting people back in the motion of just being open-ended with the teams, not just following the cookie cutters, not just following what's high. You know what I'm saying? Imagine if Skarmory was in this cup. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just imagine how everybody would have one. Just kind of taking that out of it and kind of eliminating mirror matches, creating those unique individual qualities in each trainer, seeing who is familiar with what. And it just kind of forced you to do that with no Umbreon, no Sableye. Some of these pokes that would literally, you know what I'm saying? If Sableye was in it, no other ghost would eclipse it, because there's pretty much going to be no charm users with no fairy. So just some of those simple facts, you know what I'm saying, that kind of help define this meta and make it a little bit, you know what I'm saying, more unique. It's Rainbow-ish, but it's not the same thing.
I agree completely. I think when you look at a lot of the ranking systems that we have, excuse me, the ranking systems that we have in place, you're going to see a lot of the top Pokemon kind of bubble to the top of their respective category. Obviously, Skarmory is the best flyer. Medicham is the best fighter. I think Sylph did a really good job kind of keeping this fresh by kind of removing those top picks out of the way and just having all of the other Pokemon below them that aren't necessarily ranked as high but are still really great Pokemon in their own environments. I think they did a good job of kind of opening that whole field up so that we can kind of experiment more with what we like instead of just picking the top meta picks like you guys pointed out. So, and then the other thing
I would add, because it is essentially modified freestyle, is it does really this format does reward players who with extensive freestyle experience. Some of the early reactions to the cup was there was intimidation by the sheer amount of choice available. But if you're used to and familiar with playing freestyle, then it doesn't feel intimidating, but more freeing because you have more options with regards to team design.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel more like that. Like, it's the few rules that are on it still allow for such broad choice. So it's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree completely. And I know we've talked about this because we do have our weekly freestyle cups. And with all the previous cups, it's kind of maybe a rock, paper, scissors in a lot of cases, maybe a little more advanced than that. But I mean, you know that Ghost is going to beat a certain type and Psychic is going to beat a certain type. So when you build your team, it's kind of like, you know, picking those matchups. And I think Sylph has done a really good job educationally speaking, because I think a lot of trainers that went through season 1 are just so much more in tune with the relationship between the typings than they were when they started. I know I'm one of those trainers as well, and still in a lot of my videos, a lot of people will comment and say, oh, well, what you meant to say was super effective or not very effective. Or I got a comment yesterday that said that normal doesn't resist grass, and I had no idea. You know, these are just like kind of minor things that are just intricacies of how the game is developed that a lot of us aren't aware. So I can see where that could be overwhelming for a lot of trainers. But again, there's the freeing aspect of it as well. Like, you get to pick your favorite Pokemon this time, and they're actually good. You don't have to worry about a Skarmory coming in and busting your Charizard with a Sky Attack, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So if we want to move the conversation a little bit over to starters, I guess the first question is, do you have a favorite starter in mind that you would like to use in the cup so far?
Not right now. Venusaur does have that flash of being number 1, but Meganium also is appealing for the Dragonair matchup, and it does better against Lapras. But also curious to potentially use Swampert, or because of the community coming up, Charizard, which would allow me to use one of my personal favorites, Victory Bell. So still very much in the air of which starter I would choose.
Church, do you have a preference?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting considering we've lost some of the general bulk, like I said, with some of those main picks, the Skarmory, the Azumarill, the Medicham. Like, we've kind of lost some of that. So a lot of starters, with their moves being so good, they are kind of glassy. You know what I'm saying? Venusaur's good, but it's not the bulkiest. Meganium's way more bulky, so I'll probably lean in that direction as well if I was going for our grass starter. Sceptile to me is kind of I mean, it's good. It's got, you know what I'm saying? It's got its, you know, little fringe with the Fury Cutter and the Dragon Claw and some of that other stuff, but it's not going to be as reliable, and that consistency rating probably isn't as high if we check PvP folks. So beyond that, Blastoise will be good, but I think it'll be limited by Water Gun. Swampert, as frail as it is going to be a beast if you can keep it healthy and together. And then on top of that, once again, Charizard, Blaziken, if they can get to those blast burns, pretty much nothing resists it. And it's just like, man, it's going to be whatever you pick, it's going to be unique. I would probably be more comfortable taking on the Charizard or the Swampert. As it'd be an either or for me. Everything else is just too kind of, well, other than Venusaur, but you all know my beef with Venusaur. So
I'm really glad you touched on Venusaur. I actually wanted to raise this question to you guys. So as you're well aware, the Venusaur users use it as both a grass and a poison type. Matt, you can probably speak to this. When you encountered a Venusaur in competitive play, being a primary Victory Bell user, especially in the open tournaments that we've played, you kind of, a lot of times you have to bail out of that matchup because you know that Venusaur is going to get to the Sludge Bomb first. So I think with team building in this cup, you need to look at, if you don't run with the Venusaur as your starter, how do you shore up that weakness to a possible Venusaur that you're going to encounter later on? Do you add a Confusion user to your team? Do you bring Charizard instead? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, it being the starters, I guess it's like fire, grass, water. So you're kind of, you have to pick a direction and just kind of run that direction. You know what I'm saying? If you pick a Squirtle, you got to look out for Bulbasaur. If you pick a Bulbasaur, you got to look out for Charmander. If you pick a Charmander, you got to look out for Squirtle. So if you pick a Swampert, you just got to be like, all right, cool. You kind of have to worry about the Frenzy Plant as well as the Sludge Bomb. And you know what I mean? If you pick the Charizard, then you're kind of hitting it in the face and you don't really have to worry about it. You checked it just by selecting this starter. So it's kind of, it's just whichever one you want to protect, and it's just archetypes.
Yeah. You can't fear the grass mirror. Is that partly what comes across is they see that fast charging sludge bomb, and by default Venusaur gets used over the other grass types, but you just can't fear the grass mirror, either through by having that extra support, not just potentially through a Confusion user, but using the dragons effectively, such as Dragonair as a safe switch if you need to bail out, Drapion with that Ice Fang, or even Skunk Tank with that Poison Jab Flamethrower coverage to provide that extra support. But yes, if you are opting to use Meganium over Venusaur, or just not going with the grass archetype, you do need to bring that little extra support for Venusaur. The one saving grace being is that both grass and poison are poor offensive typings, and thus it's not the hardest combination to wall with another team member or two within your lineup of 6.
Matt, I think you made a really good point. You honestly gave, I think, 4 or 5 different examples on how to counter Venusaur in this cup, and I don't think that we've had that flexibility in the past. Obviously, you know, Charizard's an option because it's a flying and fire type. That's the most obvious option at face value, but then you mentioned Skunk Tank, you mentioned Ice Fang Drapion. I mean, there's so many really, really great choices here. And Church, I think you also made a really good point as well. A lot of people are dealing with the overwhelm, as we mentioned a few moments ago, but you outlined it, I thought, really succinctly. You said there's a fire starter, there's a grass starter, and there's a water starter. So if you can kind of frame it in your mind in a certain way and just say those are the 3 types I need to plan around and look out for, I think it makes team building a whole lot easier. I think that really helps us segue into the next topic as well. Do you think you should be starting with that starter Pokemon and building a supportive team around it? Or do you think you should pick the best meta Pokemon and then just add the starter where it fits? So I guess the question is chicken and egg. Do you start with the starter, or do you build something first and then incorporate the starter later?
Go ahead.
My personal view is you pick the starter first because you could build the best team that you want, but then once you plug in the starter, it creates a domino effect where you lose coverage in some areas and gain it in other, and you might end up having to redesign half the team anyway. So you might as well just start from the beginning with the starter and build around their limitations.
George, do you have the same opinion, or is your opinion a little bit different?
Well, I guess it would just depend on your approach. I would agree with Matt, but I guess an anti-meta player could be like, okay, I'm gonna go straight for just Dragonair. We're gonna pick that. Then we're gonna pick Lapras probably because it's the only other thing that really gives all 3 starters really kind of issues. You know what I mean? I guess they could build off that, but I'm more of Matt's. Just treat it like the game. Pretty simple. You know what I'm saying? Which way do you want to go? And just kind of go from there, because you're going to have to deal with the starters. The starter pool is way more limited than the rest of the. So if you know you're going to have to deal with Venusaurs and Meganiums and Charizards and Swampers and other stuff, you might as well start there and just whichever one you're most comfortable with.
A lot of credence has been given so far to dragon types. We're seeing a lot of just dragon breath all across the board. It essentially melts so many things, and dragon doesn't really have a hard counter. There aren't any fairies, but there aren't many charm users either. Excuse me. I think you have Raichu with charm. I think that's the only possible charmer in the cup. So I guess my question to you guys is, are dragons a dominant force that we're going to see throughout Timeless, or are they just maybe an early fad, and once the meta kind of bubbles down, we'll figure out a way around them?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was an all-dragon team next week on Reddit.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just kind of, it's like Matt said, it's timeless in many ways, in the whole having to pick a starter and it kind of being the 4 most popular gens that Pokemon could say exist. As both of y'all both know, I'm not too well versed on the mainstream games. You know what I'm saying? That's Matt's expertise. But from what I've learned from him, until Fairy came out, there was really nothing that resisted Dragon. And, you know what I'm saying, Steel and Dark didn't come around until Gen 2. And, some of these other things, and it's like, if you make it kind of limited to that, it's like, yeah, Dragon is going to dominate. Because back in the day, Dragons was dominating. Ghosts were too. These were some of the timeless things about Pokemon. So it's like, bringing back that essence is really good. I like it.
Yeah, the completely unresisted damage means they're going to stay around for the entire cup. You could easily build around safe switches with either Dragonair or Shelgon. Maybe not as much King Kingdra because that water typing betrays it.
It does.
Or yes, you could switch out to
Frenzy Plant hits hard.
Yeah, you could switch out the Kingdra, but then literally not just any Frenzy Plant user, but pick your generic. But pick your generic Razor Leaf user, and they're still gonna rip through Kingdra, and cause some notable issues.
I think that's a great segue as well. A lot of people are looking at kind of the grass dichotomy that we're facing. So you either pick Venusaur or Ivysaur, or you go with a Razor Leafer. So I think there's a lot of different opinions out there on Razor Leafers. I think the three of us probably have the most experience in competitive play with Victory Bell. I did see Ludicolo burst onto the scene in the North American Championships. I think there was one trainer that used it in the semifinals or the finals. So based on your testing so far, do you have a favorite Razor Leaf user at this juncture?
Well, me and Matt go way back when it comes to the Razor Leafers. We're both probably Victory Bell experts. In fact, me and Matt worked together very early on to just try to discuss Razor Leafers and how that they are kind of plug and play in the freestyle meta, because Razor Leaf is such an incredible move. It's really kind of, and that's why we feel that grass Pokemon's charge moves are always so terrible. Is because Razor Leaf is just such a good move that if you just give it that you can kind of just get the Razor Leafer that fits your team. And in fact, there was a point in time where I was trying to win freestyle every week with a different Razor Leafer, and I did have a win with Ludicolo like way back.
Very nice.
So you know what I mean? So I feel strongly about it. I don't feel that stress to need a Venusaur or a Meganium, and especially if it's matchups that I'm familiar with. So I've never wanted that for everybody to be like, oh, Venusaur's at the top, so I'm going to get a Venusaur. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as necessary in this cup as other cups.
Matt, would you agree with that sentiment? Do you have a favorite Razor Leafer that you've been testing so far, or is it Victory Bell still?
Still very much Victory Bell. Other candidates, Ludicolo, I could say because of that neutrality, because it's ice and fire neutral. And if you are able to somehow build up the energy to get off a
Ice Beam or a
Ice Beam and
Hydro Pump? Yeah, Hydro Pump.
Yeah. Ice Beam and Hydro Pump. That's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, Ice Beam and Hydro Pump. Definitely threats there. There has been some early with Abomasnow. I don't actually see Abomasnow viable.
I don't either.
It's an all or nothing Pokemon right there.
It's grass. That grass ice typing betrays it with its 7 weaknesses and that double weakness to fire. You're just really asking to get farmed by the fire user on the opposing team. And because it's a Razor Leaf user, despite being an ice type, it's not going to build up the energy fast enough to get off blizzards. To seriously threaten the Shelgon and Dragonair.
In early testing, I've used Abomasnow a few times, and I actually built one back in Tempest Cup because I didn't have access to Tropius. And I think a lot of players are going to recycle a lot of Pokemon from the previous cup, so maybe that's an interesting thing to note. If you do have Abomasnow laying around, it's not a pretty picture when you run into a Castiform and you were switch locked. Because Big Bad Abomasnow can't do anything. That Castiform farms you right down, just like you guys were saying.
Yeah.
And what you kind of don't want, especially out of a Pokemon that is more relying on its fast move than its charge moves, is to be in a bad switch lock. So if I'm using Abomasnow, if I see that they have a Charizard or Sunny Castform, I'm leading with it, or I'm not bringing it. Like, it's just not, because it's too, that right there is just too much. You can't, and then you're at a complete disadvantage. You didn't get the shield because you didn't even get to a charge move, and you barely put in work. So it's you never want to be caught hanging like that. So Abomasnow is not really. I think it'll be Ludicolo. I think it'll be Victory Bell, but You can never. I mean, nobody's talked about Bayleaf. I haven't looked at it, but
oh, that's a very good point. Yeah, Bayleaf.
Is Shiftery on this? I mean, it has another problem with all those weaknesses, but once again, some of these things that are different, and then Return Gloom. I'm trying to get one of those.
Oh wow, yeah.
It'll be very hard to deal with, and especially if people don't know, you know what I'm saying. And now there's the whole, you can bluff return now, like you can get a return, you know what I'm saying. Not that you would want to, you would want the return if you have a bluff, but that's a part of the game now. Somebody, you know, bluff return a Dragonair or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I've seen some wacky stuff. I saw in Cliffhanger, I saw a purified Golbat that had Poison Fang and Shadow Ball. And of course, I see the purified aura, and I think, you know, it's got to be returned. And then, of course, Sand Slash in Ferocious, it just got the purified version became available. So you had Mudshot, Return, and Earthquake. And you better pick the right one when you shield, because if you don't shield that Earthquake, you are done.
Yeah, you're in trouble. So I think that's what I'm saying. Like having in my Razor Leafer or my Grass User, it's like I just want a little bit more. And that's kind of why we've always just kind of been Victory Bell guys, because to me, there's so many ways to run it, and now you could even run it with Return.
Yep.
So literally, Victory Bell is the like grass Jack in the Box. You don't know what's gonna pop out. You have the acid spray. Nothing is better than getting a shield and giving them jelly. Like nothing. Yeah. Like nothing is better, and especially in the beginning of the game, because you've already lowered their defense, you got the shield, and then you do have the Sludge Bomb. Like if you have the Victory Bell, like if you're running Acid Spray Sludge Bomb, you can hit those Charizards. You can hit, you know what I'm saying? So you can also have the Leaf Blade, which is what you're probably going to get to most often to kind of back up that Razor Leaf damage. You need to throw out that grass hit before you get, because Victory Bell's a little brittle.
Yeah, well, you hit him with the Grape Jelly, Hierophane style. You know, you gotta hit him with the Grape Jelly. That jelly, man. Oh my goodness, the jelly. Because they lost the shield. They lost the shield. That's big. Exactly. I was actually in a practice game, I think yesterday, and I switched late into a Kingdra matchup, and this Kingdra had a ton of health. And I remember hitting it with a few Razor Leafs, and I thought I was going to lose, and then I was able to fire off the Acid Spray, took the shield, and then those Razor Leafs started to add up really quickly, and it actually turned it around. So Victory Bell is an amazing Pokemon, especially in the right hands.
Yeah, I think grass is going to be very pivotal, and that's why I'm happy that there's really no flying and there's not a lot of fire options. So now we get to kind of have like this grass Royal Rumble, and even poison and bug can get in there and mix around, because they never get any play when you have steel and flying, and you know what I mean? So I think it'll be really good.
Gentlemen, I think that's an excellent segue into the next topic as well. When we look at Confusion users in the Timeless Cup, we look at the bugs. I mean, you have Venomoth, you have Dustox. I'm not sure if there are many other options outside of that. You could correct me if I'm wrong. But what is your opinion on the Confusion users? I mean, are they just there to check the grass, or do they have bigger utility than that?
Considering there's no Psychic, none of it's going to be Stab. That's what I want people to know. Okay. So be careful of that. Confusion is I feel like it's a high skill cap move. You got to know, because the switching is very crucial. You can't be caught with slapping out there and not, you know what I'm saying, switching right. But as far as what it checks, I feel like it can check all of that. And the main thing that I never want people to forget in the freestyle meta, Matt has talked about it before, is Haunter. Make sure that you always have something that can check Haunter, because it's always out there floating around, laughing and licking stuff, and it'll go right through your team with the Shadow Claw and the bait. It's so much pressure. It's so intense. It's so quick. You got to be on it. So you never want to make that team that can just get swept just because you didn't have the one thing. So the Confusion covers a lot of things, but yes, the main thing to me will be Venusaur, because it's the #1 ranked Pokemon, you know, Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely Venusaur, but also, as Church said, as the primary Haunter check. And the additional one, I haven't run into the Sims, so be curious to see if it would, if you take it out fast enough, is any Intrepid trainers who try to go with Blaziken, because those those bugs and those bug poisons especially are going to be doubly resisting the counters.
Right.
And because Blaziken's a little soft, I wouldn't be surprised if Confusion, Venomoth, and Dustox actually win that matchup, despite this being a low-cost energy win.
Well, I'm sure you give them one shield and they'll win, especially if the Blaziken's running counter. If it's Fire Spin, it might be a little bit different, but I do think that Confusion chunks it down. We saw a little bit of that in Twilight and Nightmare, didn't we? Or maybe was it just Nightmare? We saw that sometimes, I believe.
Nightmare, yeah, it might have been Nightmare or King. No, it wasn't in Kingdom.
Yeah, well, I think that's another excellent point as well. We kind of dabbled a little bit into the fire users. I think Blaziken is kind of a fringe fire user. You definitely want that counter to deal with the Lapras, and then maybe unleash the Blaze Kick and the Blast Burn on whatever comes next. So if we're looking at the category of fire users, I think we have to also mention the poison users. I think it's interesting in this cup that a lot of our poison types are actually dual poison darks. You have Skuntank and you have Drapion, and I'm sure there are a few others I'm forgetting. Where do you guys feel that the poison and fire types fit into the meta so far? Matt, if you want to take this one first, and then we'll hand it off to Church after that.
Yeah, so the poison types primarily act as at first glance early on as anti-grass types, because they resist and at worst deal neutral damage back to grass, if not super effective damage. Drapion offers an interesting potential to combo with like a Razor Leaf user because of the Ice Fang allows it to beat out both Shelgon and Dragonair. So it provides that additional anti-dragon support. Skuntank, I'm not entirely sure beyond beating grass what its specific niche will be. Skuntank, always in any meta that it's involved, seemingly carves out an important niche. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not sure what it does after beating grass. And fire types generally, man, they face a constrained meta. Like they're there to be assassins of grass, and to be assassins of grass and to be their bodyguards as well, to take out those bug types is their two primary roles. But they could be very inconsistent in their performance due to the omnipresence of dragon and water on teams.
Church, do you have anything to add to that discussion there about the fire and poison users?
The fire is unique because, it's like I said, none of them are really good like fire Pokemon, like by definition, other than I guess Charizard would be the closest thing, because you really kind of want them for everything else. The you know what I'm saying, Charizard having the double resistance to grass, resist fighting, being able to kind of be elusive with that, throw the Dragon Claw. With Ninetales, you're going to have the Side Shock and the Solar Beam, both not even fire moves. I think PvP suggests Flamethrower, but you know, people love the Solar Beam nuke and running that Rainbow Ninetales.
Yep.
And then,
that's what I did.
Yeah, exactly. And then Blaziken having the counter and the Blaze Kick. Yeah, you really kind of want it for the counter though, which is crazy. Like what you want to do with Blaziken is bring him in against a Lapras. That seems nuts, right?
Yeah, it's
you know what I'm saying? So, I'm not a fan. But the fires aren't even really kind of there. They're just kind of, they deal mostly neutral damage to the meta. So it's like I said, those skilled Charizard users, like they're going to be there. Everybody loves Charizard. Everybody has shiny. So it's going to be a very unique spot. And then beyond that, Magcargo, maybe, but it doesn't exactly do the same job that a fire is supposed to do, because it's just the fire that takes out the other fires.
It's mainly a rock type.
That's what it really is. So it's like that's what I'm saying. Like most of the fires do something else. So it's not as strong. Poison has always been an interesting type to me. It's one of those 5 that really kind of make an impact, like steel, ground, flying, poison, fairy, like the ones that kind of, they do weird things as far as what they resist and what they hit. Like he said, poison is going to do, its job. It's going to hit most things for neutral, and especially in that grass Royal Rumble that we talked about. So poison is going to be unique. it's gonna be able to hit. Like I'm not sure what a sludge bomb does to a Dragonair,
but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things, and especially it's gonna be real fun. Like that's my favorite part is seeing all these bugs and the different grass users come out and how people are gonna use them. We just got so much going on.
Awesome. Guys, I think that's an excellent segue as well. You mentioned Dragonair, Church. I think if we could just look over the top, maybe a few of the top picks here, and then close out with just your overall thoughts on the cup, I think that'd make it for a really, really great first episode. So what I did was I went to pvpoke.com. If you haven't been there, trainers, I highly recommend it. It's an awesome ranking, battle simulation, and just overall matchup mastery website. I use it all the time, probably every day. So what I did was I went to their top ranking for the Timeless Cup, and I removed all of the starter Pokemon, so all of the restricted picks that are usually colored in gold, and I have here the list without any of the starters. So as Church just mentioned, the first one that we have listed here at rank number 2 is Dragonair. So I just want to add maybe kind of one little caveat to each of these top picks. Maybe we'll just hit a few of these. For Dragonair, what I found in my playtesting so far is that you absolutely need a good IV Dragonair. If you're going up against other trainers, they're going to have Dragonair. It's one of those that's just it's a staple of the team. It's not restricted in any way, so you can expect to see lots of them. And if you go into that Dragon Breath mirror match and your Dragonair doesn't have great IVs, you will lose. So that's my little bit to add about Dragonair. I know there's a furious debate around Return versus Dragon Pulse. I think that's a very interesting debate that will play out. Gentlemen, do you have anything to add to the Dragonair debate at the moment?
I feel like it just depends on what you want to use it for. Do you want it to be an actual generalist, and be kind of offensive, or do you just want it to be a safe switch? Because if you put the Aqua Tail in a Return, I feel like that's the safe switch. Dragon Pulse will actually hit you. So,
and I primarily view Dragonair as the safe switch, serving as like a similar role to like Fortress did in Jungle. Where it doesn't necessarily beat anything hard, but doesn't necessarily lose anything hard, allowing it to potentially overcome losing matchups with an energy advantage.
I think that's really great. I think that's a really great analogy. Definitely the Fortress analogy makes so much sense. So the number, I guess the second pick down the list is number 6 at Kingdra. Guys, I want to play a little guessing game with you. So when you look at Kingdra, don't look at PvPoke, don't cheat. But if you look at Kingdra's matchups against the meta, I want you to tell me how many matchups it loses when it has 1 shield advantage to 0 shields on the opposing side.
Probably
1 shield advantage to
3.
a 0.
Yeah, 1 to 0. So if you came into a matchup and it was at the very end, you had a perfectly healthy Kingdra with 1 shield versus anything else in the Timeless Cup meta on the other side, how many of those matches would Kingdra lose?
It'd be 3 or less.
It would almost be 0, you would think, unless something had the bulk taken outrage.
That's why I said 3 or less, because there might be something.
So here's a shocker. So the win column is 192. The loss column is 0.
Exactly.
It loses no matchups. 100% win rate, 1 shield to 0.
It double resists fire, it double resists water, and it's just neutral to grass. So it probably is pretty pivotal.
And nothing can take nothing can take the outrage nuke.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably what it is actually. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And that's another one.
Yeah, plus the Dragon Breath. Oh yeah.
That's another one I've been a little frustrated with the IV hunt, where I have like a 2000 something rank Kingdra and a rank 765 Kingdra, like pretty big difference, and yet they both in Sims lose to default IV Dragonair.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know where it hits that bulk point, which allows it to be Dragonair, but I don't know how. Given that it's already a kind of all or nothing Pokemon in a neutral shield scenario, I don't know if I'll end up bringing Kingdra if I can't get a good enough IV Horsey to evolve.
Agreed. Yeah, Kingdra's just seems excellent on paper. I think as a closer, it's incredibly deadly. You definitely need to watch out for that one. Right below it, though, at number 7, I honestly think this one should be higher, is Lapras. So Lapras has a very weird moveset. We have not seen this moveset in a cup previously. It has Legacy Ice Shard, which is either a Legacy move you acquired years ago, or one you got from the Lapras raid day, and maybe you got it through the raid, or maybe traded with a friend afterwards. It does have Surf and Skull Bash. So do you guys have any thoughts on the moveset there? It's kind of weird, but it kind of works, right? I've been playtesting it, and I really enjoy it. My first exposure to this moveset was after Church recommended it through Freestyle, in, or maybe it was Cliffhanger, either Cliffhanger or Freestyle, and I really love it so far. What do you guys think?
Surprisingly solid. It was, even without Ice Beam, it still beats Dragonair. You still got that surf pressure to dish out the fire types, and Skull Bash is there to provide that extra bulk. Everyone's going to, I feel like, have to brush up on an older video from For the Battles, which is how to handle the Lapras mirror with this very same moveset.
Oh wow, I didn't know she made one. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a real good one.
Yeah,
shout out to For the Battles.
Yeah, and so and it's definitely going to be worth a rewatch, because Lapras mirrors are going to come. Ah man, that may join the pantheon of painful mirrors to be be a part of.
Just like Kingdom Cup.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah. Wow. Right below Lapras is actually at number 8. We have Venomoth, and I looked at the matchups here. Its number 3 best matchup is against Blaziken. It wins with 837 is the final score. That is a clear-cut win. That's probably, what do you guys think? Maybe 80% health remaining. I mean, that's a pretty easy win for Venomoth.
Yeah. It's smoking a Blaziken.
Yeah, the issue with Venomoth is it's not viable without Poison Fang.
You don't think so? What about Return?
No. I didn't think about Return, but yeah, just being able to deal super effective damage, quick super effective damage back to non-poison grass types is valuable, instead of having to build up to that Silver Wind. But Return Venomoth may be something to get into.
I was just challenging you there, Matt. I think Poison Fang is definitely the better move here. It is picked by 30% of trainers, whereas Return is only 14%. That's probably all the trainers like me who don't have the Legacy Poison Fang. So I was just picking with you there. But one point I do want to make is for the fast moves, this is really surprising me. This is the first time I've seen it. We have Bug Bite coming in at 68% and Confusion's only at 31%. That's really weird to me.
It's probably all of the grass Pokemon that are available. It's just the fact that Bug Bite will probably do a little bit better. Because like I said, the Confusion isn't stab. So it probably doesn't, it doesn't probably generally kill as much as we think. You got to remember how many pokes are in the meta. So certain percentages aren't, they're on there against like the major meta. Obviously you want to use Confusion.
It's against the field. That's probably why Lapras isn't ranked as high. Is that the actual meta itself is much narrower because of the centralizing force of the dragons, which makes Lapras a very critical Pokemon. But against the field, Lapras,
it's just Water Gun for Lapras. Same thing.
Yeah. It loses to enough pokes against the field that knock it down a few matches. Even though the general flow of matchups in Timeless could just be this dance between your Dragon type and Lapras. In the Razor Leaf user, you have to take out the Lapras, or the Grass starter if you go with the Grass starter. The word of warning: default IV Venusaur loses handily to Ice Shard Lapras. It's something like Lapras has like a battle rating of 765, so I don't even know if a max ball Venusaur beats an Ice Shard Lapras, while default IV Meganium wins.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one more poke I want to go over here, and then we can kind of skip around if there's one you'd like to discuss or one that's maybe kind of fringe or more interesting. But at number 9 is Haunter, and we spoke about Haunter a little bit earlier before. There's one key thing I want to point out. It does have a couple of notable wins, but I think it's ranked so highly because of its performance against the rest of the field. If you look at the top counters, number 1 is Venomoth, and then behind that are things like Pupitar, Gorbis. When's the last time you even looked at your Gorbis in your storage? I mean,
Gorbis, bro.
it's like a radioactive, seahorse or something. I don't even know what that thing is. And then there's Wormadam Sandy and Wormadam Plant, which I don't think either of us have those. So outside of Venomoth, there are no really strong answers to Haunter. I mean, what do you guys think about that? It seems like it's pretty wide open for Haunter. If you don't see a Venomoth, you better bring it on your team of 3.
Kingdra does pretty well. Other than that, Tyranitar does well. Wishcash, obviously.
It's very soft counter for Haunter. Yeah. The Poison Darks can win. Drapion can win even if it gets baited and gets hit by a Shadow Ball. I think for Skuntank to win, it can't get baited by the Shadow Punch, and it wins. And then even Swampert, Swampert can also because of just how quick Hydro Cannon spam is beat Haunter, and short it outspeeds it. But yeah, if you're not packing a Confusion user and Venomoth is Legacy and Dustox needs to be maxed, yeah, it gets very soft countery very quickly.
Even the Swampert is dicey. The only ones that are like less than 400 are going to be Dustox, a Marowak, if you would ever think of doing it, Politoed. Snowy Cast Form is actually decent. Magcargo, Whiscash, Shiftry, surprisingly. You would think that it will resist the Razor Leaf. Arcanine, T-Tar, Charmeleon, Kingdra, Flygon, and yeah, Venomoth, and all. Even that stuff. It's like, man, how else would you use it? So it might only be Venomoth.
Yeah. Interesting. Are there any picks that you gentlemen would like to cover? Anything that's kind of maybe further down the list that you think has a lot of use? I have one in mind, but I'd love to hear yours.
Frostlass, always.
Frostlass, really?
Yeah, Frostlass. If you don't want to use Lapras, Frostlass is your next best ice user. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that's a downgrade.
It was my cliffhanger MVP.
Well, it's just a great generalist. I think we've talked about this before. I mean, Frostlass really dishes out so much punishment. I will challenge you guys, though, on a Lapras substitute. I think Celio is better than Frostlass because it has more bulk. How do you feel about that?
I don't have much experience using Celio, so I unfortunately can't add much to the conversation at the moment. Another Pokemon that I'll find interesting to see how much use it gets is because rock types are grass Pokemon's best friend. Is how many people who use grass starters use Magcargo on their team to provide that rock coverage to just delete fire and bug types.
Wow. Okay. Like a buddy system. You have you have a pairing, then you just pick the best lead.
Yeah. And if you're willing to, though, it's a brutal way to win. Magcargo handily beats Lapras if it double shields. It loses in every other shielding scenario, but it dominates Lapras if it's willing to double shield. But that is generally a brutal way to win.
That's extremely brutal. You're just throwing rocks at the Lapras until it collapses, you know?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Two more that I wanted to highlight. One is Return Banette. If you have the patience to look for one, it's a Haunter without the fear of confusion. Yeah, it loses to some other stuff, but technically I think its attack status higher. So it's a very, very unique one. And then last but not least, one of my favorite Pokemon. I actually have 3 PvP perfects.
Goodness.
Wishcash.
The Mud Boy.
You already know some key matchups I want people to pay attention to. Dragonair, it beats Charizard, Venomoth.
Can it go straight Mud Bomb for Dragonair, or does it have to land the Blizzard?
We shall. I think that's the 1 shield, so I think you throw the blizzard. Oh, you lose the 2 shield, but you win the 1 shield, and obviously you win anything less than invisible.
Yeah.
Because it's got that bulk.
The chocolate fountain, the chocolate spray. So.
Yes, the chocolate. He got all the Hershey's.
Guys, my fringe pick is Pseudo Widow. It is a rock type, but it's you know, whenever I see a meta like this and I see the top 3 or 5 dominant Pokemon, I really try to find something that can straddle all of those matchups, something that can win but is flexible enough to operate within the meta as a whole. And Pseudo Widow, I mean, you can take 1 Surf from Lapras and the counters can add up really quick. That Rock Slide is going to bust the game wide open, and then you have Kingdra as well. Pseudo Widow can actually beat Kingdra in a lot of shield scenarios. And the Rock Slide overall is just punishing. I mean, even if you go up against something like a Venomoth, obviously, you do fear those Water Gunners and the Razor Leaf users and the Grass type users, excuse me. But those are the threats, and I'm really loving Pseudo Widow so far.
It's making me want to run Charizard just so I can, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Not have to deal with it. And just put whatever around it and protect it from the Pseudo Widow and then do my thing. So it's like I said, you really just gotta kind of pick it. It's broad enough. I think it's, well, I don't know the total number, but I know it's like over 150. So pretty much it's like the best of the best, first 4 metas. Pick what you want and just see if you know your strategy well enough, because I think that this might be the first cut where there are literally so many ways to win.
Yes.
That, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many ways to win that it's just, I think this is going to be the best meta yet. I think it's brilliant. I really thank Sylph for coming up with this one. So I'm ready.
Matt, what are your overall thoughts on the meta? Do you think it's going to shape up to be a really good cup? We do get that extra week as well. So if we get a good cup, I'm glad it's this one because it's going to last so long.
Yeah, this is the meta. Yeah.
This is like basically what, like, if you do a lot of, for those who enjoy freestyle, this is the meta they've been waiting for, which is like a modified form of freestyle that provides a broad field but still allows you to use a variety of different Pokemon, and that is like what anyone in any competitive esport asks for, is that there are multiple paths to victory that both make it challenging, keep it fresh, and a little unpredictable. I think the issue people have with Ferocious is that everyone figured out the efficient path, and that meta relied extensively on less on strategy and much more on execution, to the point where it felt like a little random if you guess wrong. While here, because of the sheer variety of pokes involved, you're going to see a lot of different strategies and a real ability to come back from a bad lead.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to end on just a fun kind of question. This is the Timeless Cup. It is nostalgia based. We're trying to have a really good time with it. The holiday season is coming around. We're going to be spending a lot of time with our families. For a lot of us, we got our first game when we were kids, and it was Christmas time or maybe even our birthdays. So my question to you is, what was the first Pokemon game you ever played, and what was the last Pokemon game you played? Or if you're still playing, what's the most current one that you still play, besides Pokemon Go, of course?
Well, for me, it was either, I want to say it was Blue, because I think, because as a little kid, I just really liked the design of Blastoise better than Charizard, so I want to say it was Blue. But I ended up playing both Red and Blue, and then the last game I played is the one I'm currently playing, which is Shield. But that was with an 18-year break in between.
Wow.
I played Gold and Silver, went away for 18 years, and then came back in October last year when I picked up Pokemon Go and played Ultra Moon.
Wow. Oh, what about you, Church?
Well, unfortunately for me, I hate to not sound as cool as Matt, but Pokemon Go was actually my first game, man.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So I don't have the same nostalgic connection, but I mean, I remember it. You know what I mean? My brothers played. You know what I mean? I remember being around it. If Smash Brothers count, I guess that's technically my first.
Oh, it totally counts. That totally counts.
Okay. All right, cool. With the Smash Brothers. Mewtwo is a god.
Yes.
He's amazing. Pikachu, Jigglypuff. You know, I just started kind of on that way, and then, Pokemon Go.
Yeah,
picked it up, never put it down. So
Smash Brothers definitely gives the impression that Jigglypuff is God.
Oh yeah,
Jigglypuff. I'm a Hungry Box fan, so like to me, Jigglypuff. Oh my god. So
awesome. Gentlemen, I really appreciate it. For me personally, I started with Pokemon Blue. I remember my dad took my brother and I to Walmart, and we really wanted to get into Pokemon, so he got version Blue for me and version Red for my brother, and we just played that nonstop. I actually played through Silver, and then kind of like Matt, I took a long break. I didn't pick Pokemon back up until Pokemon Go came out, and again, I think the summer of 16 is when it dropped, and I waited at least 2 or 3 months. I was behind everybody else. I said, I'm never going to play that game. Look at those silly people walking around holding their phones out in front of them on campus. Like these kids are dorks. And now it's such an amazing game, and PvP has added such a great layer to it for me. For a long time, I think you could just kind of grind and do your own thing and have a good time, maybe joining up with people to do raids, but I've actually built a really strong friend group around PvP, and I have Pokemon Go to thank for that.
Same.
Definitely, I can definitely tell you the same.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I wanted to thank you, Church and Matt, for joining us for this Dojo Roundtable. This was our first Dojo Roundtable. I hope to have a lot more. Next time, we will definitely bring Linden in. Trainers, if you got something useful from this conversation, if any of these insights appeal to you, if you learned something new, please hit that like button. It only takes a second. Leave us a comment if you agree, especially if you disagree. Let us know. We'd like to debate. I think that's one of the great things about Pokemon Go PvP is that it's wide open for debate, and Timeless Cup is a great example for an open platform as well. So there's plenty to discuss. There's plenty to talk about in the next episode. If you really like this episode, let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more. Matt, Church, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us on.
My pleasure.